language learning. If you could add in the chat box where you're from and anything else, feel free to use the chat box. I see Philip has started. He's from Germany. Feel free to use the chat box for questions, for comments, and to chat in general. I use the chat because it helps me stay focused. I kind of talk to everybody. It's a social kind of environment that keeps me on my toes when I listen to somebody else speak. I find it a lot easier to use the chat than to listen to a video, watch a video, or listen to audio where I can't, constantly add my comments. So, hello, Guadalupe from Mexico. Great. All right, so, and we've got Venezuela, Thomas. Excellent. All right, so today's session is about theories. We're going to focus on theories. Later on, in the next weeks to come, we'll be discussing approaches to language learning and specifically approaches to teaching English as a foreign and in some cases second language. We'll talk about methods, and at the end we'll discuss class management. It doesn't matter whether it's online or face-to-face. There is a need for class management. So today we're going to focus on theories of learning, and we'll start with learning. What is learning? Okay, I think that's the huge question, and our thoughts and opinions on learning generally determine how we teach. So what we think about learning is really important. You may find that your ideas about learning change when you start teaching online. And when you start teaching in general, you'll find that as the years go by, you may find that your ideas change. All right, so Philip's got acquiring knowledge. Hello, Brenda from Paraguay. Good to see you. Okay, don't be shy. Feel free to use the chat. I'm looking and I'm not seeing everybody responding to where they're from. All right, it is acquiring knowledge. It's everything that you say that it is, okay, because that's what you think learning is. But there's a great book that I don't think it's too expensive. It's called Applying the Science of Learning, and it's by Richard E. Meyer, who is a proponent of using technology. The book is very thin. I don't know if you can see it. It's very thin. So it's a very, very user-friendly book, especially for most of us who don't have much time for, it has a lot of really clear ideas, lots of tables and graphs, and really a wonderful modern way of approaching learning as a science. Okay, so it's called Applying the Science of Learning by Richard E. Meyer. I've mentioned his name before. That's true, Guadalupe. Everyone learns in different ways. The question is, how does the brain, we all have the same brain. So, scientifically, what happens in our brain? Of course, there are different variables that influence it, but what happens in the brain? And if you think about learning, the idea is change. We change when we learn. Okay, that's the idea of there was no need for change. And when you think about the science of learning and the idea of the Newton way of learning, which says that there are laws and you have to follow those laws, then what is science? And then there's the quantum theory of changes and unpredictable. Can we predict the change that will happen when we learn? Okay, so it's not that simple. So language learning by Richard E. Meyer is called Applying the Science of Learning, and you can apply this to any kind of learning. And he focuses on how people learn. And think about it. That's right, according to neurology, right. And psychologists, don't forget, they all have a say in that too. How do people learn? Okay, that's the first question that he focuses on. The second question is, how can we help people learn? What can we do as teachers? Because our goal is to help people learn. What can we do to make this happen? And the third aspect is, how do we determine what people know? In other words, assessing. So the first question is, we need to know a little bit about how people learn. And then, how can we help them? And finally, how do we know what they learned? Right, we need to analyze. Very good, Philip. That's right. We need to assess. So today we're going to discuss learning theories. And the question is, it's great to have theories, but how do they apply to our educational practice? So one connects with the other. Our learning theories have to connect with how we teach. Otherwise, what's the point? Yeah, there are lots of articles. Thank you, Thomas, by Richard Meyer. In fact, if you go to YouTube, you'll find Richard Meyer there too. I I find Richard Meyer very, very practical. You know, he talks about theories, but he has a very practical way, and he believes, well, you'll read about it, but he's got all the theories there, and then his ideas. Okay, so from theories, we're going to go into practice. So we're not going to stay with the theories, but we do have to know a little bit about the theories to know what we're doing. And there are three aspects. There's instruction, there's the learning, and assessment. Now, what comes first? Well, as teachers, we hope that by instructing students, by our instruction, or whatever that is going to be in the classroom, there will be learning. And we will have to find out what learning took place by assessing it. And this is all based on Myers. So, there are 6 learning theories for languages. Theories. There are other approaches and there are different methods, but there are 6 theories. And some of them you will recognize. The first one is a behaviorist theory. How many of you have heard of behaviorism? Well, if you look at the word behave, that's a critical aspect of the theory. All right, very good, Huda. Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. Okay, so it's how we behave. Okay, so it's based on behavior. The next one is universal grammar. Most of you are probably familiar with Noam, well, professor, right? Noam Chomsky or Chomsky? Chomsky. Okay. Have you heard of him? Well, he developed something called universal grammar, which means that we all have the ability to learn a language. And the grammar that we have is innate. We are born with a certain kind of grammar in our brains. And then depending on the language, doesn't matter what language we are born into, there is a universal grammar that allows us to learn languages. Okay, and that's what Chomsky developed. And it was very revolutionary because the idea was very transformational. It meant that if you go deep into the brain, you will find that we're all born with this. Of course, you can't really prove this. Okay, we're talking about theories. Okay, remember, these are only theories. Next is Krashen's monitor, and you must have heard of Krashen. Most of us probably learned English through this theory, and the idea is that you practice a language that is acquired. So the key here is acquiring a language. You don't learn a language, you acquire it in a natural way. The same way that you acquire your first language. We don't go to school from the age of 1 when we were born to learn a language. We have the ability, as Chomsky said, and Krashen went a bit further to say that we all learn a second language or third language the way we learn a first language. Behavior, by the word behavior, you mean change. And then there's the cognitive theory. The cognitive theory of language learning is very similar to the behaviorist. They're very similar. The only difference is that with the cognitive, you measure knowledge, not behavior. In other words, in the behaviorist, it's how you behave as a language learner. And with a cognitive, it's the knowledge that you have. Okay, so that's the cognitive. And then there's the conversation theory. Conversation means that you learn through conversation, hello Helena, through discussions and conversations, and that's how you pick up or acquire language. Very similar to the idea that it's natural to learn a second language, and you do it through listening to conversations, but not only listening, but actually conducting conversations yourself. How many of you learned English through conversations? If you could just put your thumbs up. Or learned another foreign language, if English is your native language, if you learned a foreign language through conversations. That's a good point, Philip. Okay, we're not saying whether these are wrong or right. These are theories, and theories are theories, okay? You can accept them, use them, or not accept them. They're just theories. Spanish, Brenda, you use through conversation. Helena, you never learned a language through conversation? You must be thinking of Latin. Okay, how do you teach language today? Do you teach it through conversation? Later. Okay. So I think, Helena, you teach English through conversation. Exactly. Okay, so this is a theory it's a social theory. It's interacting. Okay, the idea behind the conversation is interacting with the other students, and the students interact with the teacher through conversations and dialogue. Right. And then there's the Schumann's acculturation. Have any of you heard of John Schumann's acculturation theory of language learning? Give me a thumbs up if you have. No, not at all. Yeah. John Schumann did a study, and he came up with a theory that people who come to countries, we're talking about immigrants to different countries, have no choice. So they learn the language because they want to be part of the culture. So you learn a language in order to be part of the culture. Hello, Halima. There are many theories, but we're talking about theories. I don't know if you came at the beginning. We're talking about theories, not methods and not approaches, even though conversation does seem like an approach. All right, so these are the 6 theories that we're going to look at. Are there any questions before we get started talking about the theories?